Hello and welcome back to the Oasis podcast, the ultimate audio guide to Oasis. And today we're going to have a bit of fun. In my last episode, I was discussing some my favorite Britpop bands, and also I heard from our friend James, who does Britpop Memories, and he gave us his top five Britpop bands. And I thought, well, we can't just sit and discuss sort of five, six, seven Britpop bands. There's so many. So let's do a tier maker. So I've put in 62 different bands, Britpop artists, and yeah, I'm going to rank them. So certain people have and haven't made the cut. So for instance, Weller is in, but Morrissey isn't. And Texas aren't in there. Radiohead, I think I might have put in there, but I'm not sure. The Manics are in. So there's certain bands that, like the Stone Roses, Happy Mondays aren't in, people like that, but like the Charlatans are. So it feels to me it's like bands that really felt active and a part of the scene in that mid-90s period, sort of 93 to 98 really is what we kind of count it as. So anyway, so we shall see how we go. So let's go A to Z here. So the first we've got is 60 Foot Dolls. Now, just to give you a heads up, what am I doing in these rankings? We're saying biblical. Obviously, this is the top. Only the very best are going to get into biblical. Very good. Makes sense. Some good tunes. There's quite a lot of these that, yeah, they've got some good tunes, but I never really kind of went into them beyond that. Not for me, mate. I'm not saying they're bad. Just for some reason, it doesn't do it for me. And not really heard enough of them. That's going to be the case for a few of these because, there's quite a few. I haven't dug into all the albums, so we shall see. All right, so we're going to start off with 60 Foot Dolls. And 60 Foot Dolls, I'm going to go in for the not really heard enough of them category. I bought the Happy Shopper single. I've enjoyed everything I've ever heard by them, which is probably a handful of their singles, to be honest. And yeah, decent sort of rock and roll band, but beyond that, not much more I can say about them. So not really heard enough of them. Next up, we've got Ash. Ash are going to go into the very good category for me. I do really love Ash. I love the first album. I think it's a masterpiece. I think beyond that, they had some really, really good songs across the rest of the albums. Not quite in the biblical category, but I think they'll probably be ending up in the quite high in the very good. Right, the Auteurs. Auteurs is a tricky one. It's sort of it's someone that Luke Haynes that fights against this Britpop tag, but he was very much one of the key players at the start of the period. But have I listened to them that much? I listened to the album a couple of times. They've never really stood out for me, but I think they are probably good. But I'm going to stick them in. Not really heard enough of them, to be honest. Who have we got next? Biss. Biss were fun. I liked Candy Pop and yeah, but they're not great though, are they? So I'm going to say not for me, mate. Black Grape, really good band. I'm going to put Black Grape in very good. I think they did a couple of really good albums, some classic singles, not quite in the biblical category, but stuff like Reverend Black Grape, and plenty of tracks on that album. The first album, the second one's really good as well. So yeah, in very good. Blue Tones, another one that are right on the edge of biblical. The Blue Tones first album really is very special. I'm going to put them just behind Ash, but ahead of Black Grape. All right, Blur. They are obviously have to go in biblical. It's kind of obligatory as they're a Britpop, the quintessential Britpop band, I would say. So they've got to go in there. Boo Radleys. Boo Radleys are a very special group. Amazing album, Giant Steps, What's in the Box, Come On Kids, obviously Wake Up Boo. But I'm going to go some good tunes because, to be honest, it's sort of, I've heard quite a lot of their stuff. I really liked a lot of it, but for me, they're not quite in as high up as those ones in very good. So I'm going to go probably in the top end of some good tunes, I would imagine. Candy Skins. Candy Skins are a very special band to me, coming from Oxford. They've got some amazing songs. So I'm going to put them in the very good category, probably just behind Black Grape there. Who's next? Cast. Cast are a really good group. This is really hard. I should have done something between very good and some good tunes. Cast have to go into very good, don't they, really? Somewhere between Black Grape and the Candy Skins. Yeah, about there would be about right. Who's next? Catatonia. Catatonia, I really liked Sweet Catatonia. I remember hearing that a lot on the evening session. And then, you know, I've heard the International Velvet album and things like that quite a few times. They're good, but I'm going to put them in sub good tunes because they never really jumped out at me a huge amount beyond like Road Rage and Mulder and Scully and that sort of stuff. So yeah, some good tunes for Catatonia. Charlatans, they really are special, aren't they? Another one in this sort of between biblical and very good, I would say. I'm going to put them ahead of Ash, but not quite in biblical. Corner Shop. This is very, very difficult. Not particularly Britpop, to be honest, but I think they were important enough in the Britpop era to be on this list. I really enjoyed interviewing Tajinder when I spoke to him. I think that in terms of Britpop, I'm going to have to put them in some good tunes because overall, their entire history, yep, they'd probably be in the very good or even biblical category. But in terms of Britpop, I'm going to put them in some good tunes. Divine Comedy. If you heard the recent episode, you'll know I put Divine Comedy in my sort of in my top 5. When it comes to Britpop, I wouldn't necessarily say they are biblical in terms of Britpop. I'd say they are very good in terms of Britpop, and I'm going to put them in around there. Not quite above the Charlatans, but I'd probably say they're just about above Ash. Neil Hannon's such a brilliant songwriter, one of the finest songwriters we've got currently working, I'd say. And yeah, great band, amazing back catalogue. Dodgy. Dodgy, I'm going to put in some good tunes. I remember listening to a couple of their albums in the mid-90s a few times over the years. And yeah, they're good band, some good tunes. Really sums them up to me. I don't think they ever jumped above that level for me. As I said, I might be wrong. But yeah, that's where I put them. Echo Belly, I think I'm going to put in a similar place there. Probably ahead of Catatonia. Some good tunes. I mean, what more can you say? That first album was very special, had some really cool stuff on it. The singles especially I really liked. I've not dug into them a huge amount post that, so I'm sure there's some really good stuff on the other albums, but couldn't tell you. So they're not, I've heard enough of them, I'd say, to not put them in. Not really heard enough of them, but yeah, I wouldn't say they quite crack very good. So let's stick them in some good tunes. Elastica, tough one, because they only really did one album. I know they came back and did a second album in like 1999, I think. But that first album is good enough to push them into the very good category. I'm going to put them just between the Blue Tones and Black Grape. How about that? Yeah, because that album is good enough to really set them apart. It is very special. Who have we got here? Embrace. I'm going to go in very good. They are quite late, so not really. Are they Britpop? Not really. Very, very end of Britpop, I'd say. But yeah, I mean, their first couple of singles were in 97, early 98. So I'd say that, yeah, they are kind of a Britpop band. And yeah, really good. Enjoyed interviewing Steve from the band last year. That was very special. So yeah, I'm going to stick them in very good. That's where they live for me. Who have we got next? Gene, this is going to be controversial. I'm sticking them in the not for me, mate. They were one of those groups back in the day that they just didn't really do it for me. I like that Fighting Fit song, but the other songs I just thought they're a bit kind of a Smiths wannabe and a bit Suede wannabe and a bit wet, and they never really did it for me. To be fair, I could put them in not really heard enough of them because I never really dug into any albums, but just from what I heard about them, I was just like, nah, not for me, mate. Who's next? Geneva, same thing, same thing. Um, Late Britpop, like we're saying, around that sort of more that embrace time. I'm sure a lot of people absolutely love them, but I just remember thinking, yeah, I didn't really like them very much. I think he had a lovely voice, that high registered voice, a bit more cinematic and epic sounding, but yeah, didn't really do it for me. Gomez. Gomez, once again, very late days of Britpop. You could probably argue they aren't Britpop, but they're just about sneak in, I would say. I'm going to put them in some good tunes. They're good. I liked sort of Whipping Piccadilly and a few of the tunes around there. I really like the dual singers, and I think the guy's Ben, the second singer, who had that like really raspy voice and stuff. That gave a real nice addition to their sound. And they're just cool, but not in the very good. But I'd say they're going to be around there somewhere. Gorky's Zygotic Minky. I'm going to have to put them in not really heard enough of them. What I heard, I really liked. I like the fact they're quirky and weird and a bit like a sort of a more quirky and weird version of Super Furry Animals. And so I loved Super Furry Animals, but they are, everything I've heard of them I liked, but I've never dug into an album. I've heard a handful of songs probably, so that's where they're going to live for me. Who's this? Heavy Stereo. Heavy Stereo, I think, are some good tunes. They're not quite in not for me, mate, because they are good, but they're going to be in the low end of some good tunes because that's what they have. They've got a few good tunes. That the album's just been re-released, it's a good album, but it doesn't jump out. So I'm going to stick them in some good tunes alongside Hurricane Number One. They've also got some good tunes. Some of it's pretty bad. Like there's sort of some of it's a bit kind of in that realm of when people talk about bands that came along that kind of just wanted to sound like Oasis. I think this was Andy Bell like trying to be Oasis, with Alex Lowe kind of doing a bit of a Liam impression. But they're not in the not for me, mate, because they've got some really, really good songs, especially Step Into My World, which was an absolute classic. So I'm going to stick them in there ahead of Heavy Stereo, but behind Gomez. All right, James. James is another tricky one, similar to Charlatans. Huge body of work, really good band. Never a huge band for me. I really like a lot of their songs, but never really dug into albums massively. But they've got to be on the very good, just because of the, as I said, the huge amount of great stuff they've put out over the years. But I'm going to put them relatively lower down because while they are a legendary band that have done loads of great stuff, a lot of it wasn't in the Britpop period. I was never too bothered about like She's a Star and that sort of album in that later 90s. So yeah, in they go. All right, how are we doing? We're almost there. Who's that? Kaniki. Kaniki are going to go in the lower end of some good tunes. I think that they have got some good tunes. I think that Punker and a few of their songs are pretty cool, but beyond that, nothing really that amazing. So let's go with that. Cooler Shaker. For me, Cooler Shaker are excellent. I'm going to stick them in very good. Where are we going to put them? I think they're around about the Blue Tones for me in Elastica, and they had one absolutely classic album. So I'm going to put them, personally for me, I would put them just ahead of Elastica, because I just go back to the album all the time. I just think it's so cool. Tracks like Hey Dude, they just keep growing and there's so much energy and passion about them. I think their version of Hush is better than Deep Purple's Hush. I just think, it's kind of faded away a bit. I don't think they sort of kept it up in the same way a lot of the other bands did. So one absolute classic album in very good. Who's that? Lightning Seeds. Lightning Seeds, similar to James in that they've got that really good body of work. I'd say that they had, in the mid-peak Britpop years, they were a bit stronger with Jollification and the album that followed it as well. Can't remember what that was called, but it had like You Showed Me and stuff like that on it. Sugar Coated Iceberg, I think it was called as well. So yeah, that was a really good couple of albums from them. So I'm going to put them in and around. It's difficult because none of their albums are as good as, say, the Blue Tones or Cooler Shaker, but then their body of work is. So let's put them in there. All right, Long Pigs. Oh, that's a really tough one because when we say some good tunes, like the singles off that Long Pigs album are probably if you're doing your top 50 Britpop singles, She Said and On are definitely in there. Where are we going to put them? Long Pigs. Let's stick them around about just behind Embrace, above Black Grape. There you go. Lush. Lush, I'm going to go Some Good Tunes. I think they were good. They did some good tunes. I never really dug into them massively beyond that. I know they've done some cool stuff, probably out pre-Britpop as well. So let's just stick them in and around there. Go on then. All right, Manic Street Preachers. They, I think, need to go into the biblical category. I think they're not too far ahead of the Charlatans. I think that they're around about lower end of biblical, higher end of very good, especially when we're talking about Britpop, because, you know, you've really got the Holy Bible's not really a Britpop album, but it was 1994. And it was special. It was on top of the pops. It was exciting. And then you go into Everything Must Go, which was absolutely huge, one of the most important Britpop albums. And then This Is My Truth, Tell Me Yours, where they went off and won the best album at the Brits and best band at the Brits and all that sort of stuff. So the Manics, very special band. They've got to go in biblical for me. Manson, another one that had one incredible album. I also really like the second album as well, Six. That was one I listened to a lot of around the same time as the Manics album, actually. I remember listening to that a lot in my first year at uni. So where are we going to put Manson? They are very special. They're so cinematic. I love Paul Draper's voice. They're going to go around about here. Let's put them ahead of Elastica and ahead of Cooler Shaker. I'm going to put them ahead of Lightning Seeds, but just behind the Blue Tones. There we go. Marion, I'm going to say not really heard enough of them. I've heard, like, probably all I've heard is the tracks that were on the Shine albums, to be honest, or the tracks that I've heard on a Britpop Revival show over the years, because I've never dug into them, never listened to an album in full. What I've heard, I've liked. The track Sleep is obviously a bit of a classic, but beyond that, don't know. So not really heard enough of them. McCalmont and Butler, I'm going to go in Some Good Tunes. I'm going to go in the lower end of Some Good Tunes because they have got one absolute storming song, yes, which is one of the best songs of all time for me. But I remember listening to that album quite a bit and it just being a bit like, oh, it's like Yes and a lot of other songs. So they, you know, it's not going to be Not For Me, Mate, just because Yes is so good. It pushes them into some good tunes. But yeah, that's where they're going to be. Menswear, I think, are going to be in the higher end of Some Good Tunes, similar to Echo Belly, because they have got one really good album. I really like most of it, and I just think they're a really fun, cool band. I really enjoyed them. Yeah, they are the quintessential Britpop band. So yes, Some Good Tunes. My Life Story, I'm going to go with not really heard enough of them. I love pretty much everything I've heard. I've really liked. But similar again to Marion, I've heard a few tracks that were on Shine On, a few tracks that were on the Britpop Revival show, but beyond that, never dug into them. So they've got to really go into not really heard enough of them. Northern Uproar. This feels a bit difficult because they have got a few good tunes, but then most of it I do think is pretty rubbish. So I'm going to have to stick them in Not For Me, Mate. They are the kind of the band I pick on the most. And like I was saying about Hurricane, they're, I think, one of those ones when people talk about When people talk about Britpop, they're like, oh, well, once you get beyond the top ones, really, there's not that great. Are you joking? Look at how many amazing ones we've already done so far. Um, but Northern Uproar are one of those bands that are like, yeah, it's a bit of an Oasis ripoff. So they are going in Not For Me, Mate. And speaking of Oasis, straight into biblical, straight into the top slot, of course. They are the band that inspired the Oasis podcast. They're my favorite band outside of the little Beatles quartet. So they are going straight in there. No, nothing else to be said. Ocean Color Scene are going to go into very good. They've got enough good stuff to be in very good rather than in some good tunes, but they're not my absolute favorite. I don't love them. I know a lot of people really love them. I'm going to say they're like solid. They're in around this Lightning Seeds Cooler Shaker area for me. I'm going to put them just ahead of Cooler Shaker because Cooler Shaker really, for me, have got one great album, whereas OCS have got two or three. So actually, I'm going to move them ahead of Lightning Seeds. Just put them there. Are they ahead of Manson? Yeah, let's just put Manson, but not ahead of the Blue Tones, though. There you go. That's where you can live. Who have we got here? Powder. Powder. They're going to be either not really heard enough of them and Not For Me, Mate, because I haven't heard that much of them. But what I didn't like. So let's go not. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Not really heard enough of them. Pulp. Pulp, obviously, straight into biblical. I'm going to put them in terms of generically Britpop. They probably should go behind Blur, but in my personal favorite bands, they would be ahead of Blur. But yeah, you cannot get away with how brilliant Pulp are. Incredible group. Radiohead. Radiohead is difficult. I mean, they probably shouldn't be on the list really because they're not really Britpop, but a couple of absolutely incredible albums. And this, as I've said, this is also 90s UK indie bands, which Radiohead absolutely were. I mean, they are biblical, to be honest, aren't they? They do have to be up in that category, especially when you talk about mid 90s. The Bends, I think, is one of the best albums of all time, and OK Computer, maybe even better. So yeah, they've got to be up in there. But I'm not going to move them into sort of ahead of Oasis and Blur and stuff because they're not really Britpop. So we're going to keep them on that far right-hand side of biblical. Real People are excellent. I'm going to stick them in very good. I'm going to stick them. Let's say they were a bit pre-Britpop really. So I'm going to stick them. Let's stick them between Cast and James, between some Scousers and some Manx. That would make sense. Who have we got next? Republica. Not for me, mate. Not for me, mate. Once again, are they really Britpop? I remember hearing Ready to Go for the first time and just thinking, this is either rubbish or the best song I've ever heard. I couldn't quite get my head around it. But yeah, and then like Drop Dead Gorgeous and things like that. I think it's like really good, fun pop with that attitude, but it just felt a bit cheesy and poppy and not really for me. Rialto, I'm going to go in, not really heard enough of them. Monday Morning 519, I think, is an absolute legendary classic song. But beyond that, I couldn't tell you another Rialto song off the top of my head. So not really heard enough of them. Saint Etienne. I'm going to stick Saint Etienne in some good tunes. To be honest, I haven't listened to huge amounts of Saint Etienne over the years, but probably enough to say that I like them. And I'm going to stick them. I think that here we've got things that aren't quite great, whereas Saint Etienne are really, really good, but it's just not really my thing. So I'm going to stick them in. Let's stick them in next to McCowan and Butler. That would be good. All right, who's that? Salad. Similar to Powder, in that I've not really heard enough of them. I've heard of them over the years. I've heard the odd tune here and there, but I couldn't tell you. So sorry, boys and girls, in there. And I'm developing a nice little playlist to hear of people I need to listen to. The Seahorses. Now this is really tricky because once again, it's one very good album. Is it very good? It's got some amazing moments and it's got some slightly shaky tunes on there as well. So I'm going to stick them in. This is tricky now, isn't it? I'm going to stick them in there. Let's stick them in there behind the Candy Skins, because I say it's one good album with some really amazing moments. It's hard to then kind of push them any higher up. Super Furry Animals, for me personally, they are in the biblical category because I absolutely love them. However, if we're talking generically Britpop, then they're probably more like around here, because they had a couple of really good, great albums in the Britpop years, but they weren't like top tier Britpop. So I'm going to probably put them there. No, ahead of Manson. Yeah. Let's go there, shall we? That is Shed 7. Shed 7, personally, I think they're good enough to be into very good, probably around Cast and the Real People. Yeah, let's stick them in there, between Cast and the Real People. So I interviewed Rick Witter, loved talking to him. It's amazing, really, how at the time I thought they were one of the lower rung Britpop bands, and actually now they're one of the ones that like fills out massive gigs and stuff. So it's really impressive. Amazing. They do these Shed Sember tours that, you know, it's amazing how their reputation has just shot up over the years. Incredible stuff. Silver Sun. Silver Sun, I'm going to stick in not really heard enough of them. I got a couple of Silver Sun singles from back in the day, and I really liked what I heard from their singles. But as I said, didn't really dig in beyond that. So couldn't really tell you, not really heard enough of them. Sleeper are going to be in the top end of some good tunes or the lower end of very good, because while I do really like their albums, I don't think that they're sort of in the real top quality tier. Probably going to be around about Shed 7, maybe a little bit less than them. Real People, James, let's stick them in there. Yeah, I prefer the Candy Skins, but then Sleeper do deserve to be ahead of the Candy Skins, given their success and everything. So yes, let's leave it there. How are we doing? Almost done. Space, probably in the top end of some good tunes. No, they've better than some good tunes, aren't they? They've done a couple of really strong albums. So let's put them ahead of Sleeper, ahead of James. I'm just going to stick them ahead of Shed 7, but not quite into the Cast territory. There we go. Stereophonics, once again, another one that was like quite late at the end of it. So it's a tough one to kind of call. First couple of albums really good. Then for me, they tail off quite a lot. So I'm going to put them, they are in very good. They're not in some good tunes. So I'm going to put them, they're probably up and around here, around the Embrace sort of world. Yeah, let's put them next to Embrace, just behind Elastica. There we go. Suede. I'm tempted to stick them in Not For Me, mate, because I don't really like Suede that much. I like a few of their songs, but I love Bernard Butler's playing on the first couple of albums, but I really don't really like Brett's voice. It's always put me off. But, they are good. They do need to be in the... some people put them in biblical. I can't bring myself to do that, because I don't really like them very much, but they do deserve to be in here. They have got some amazing songs. So let's put them in there, shall we? Yeah, just behind Manson. All right, who have we got left? Supergrass, great band. They've got to be in this real, I don't think they're quite in biblical, so they're going to be in this top tier, along with the Charlatans and Divine Comedy and Ash, I would say. So let's just put them, I'm going to put them ahead of the Charlatans in very good. I think that's where they live. Who have we got next? These Animal Men. I couldn't tell who that was then. Hold on, that's These Animal Men. So who is that? I don't actually know who that is. All right, we'll come back to that. Teenage Fan Club, another tricky one, similar to James, a band with a great body of work, done loads of really good stuff. So where do they live? I'm going to stick them in very good, and I'm going to stick them. Let's stick them ahead of the Real People. And ahead of Shed 7, I think ahead of Space, around there next to Cast. There we go. Who is that? That's going to annoy me. These Animal Men. Not really heard enough of them. That's where they live for me. Not really heard enough of them. I remember that picture that was up in the Bullingdon Arms when I used to play gigs there in Oxford in the late 90s. And I remember thinking they look really cool. And I remember always thinking, oh, I must listen to them because they look cool. They got good hair. And I've heard a few of their songs over the years, but yeah, not really heard enough of them. Travis, a tricky one, similar to the Embrace and the Stereophonics world, but they do have that first album, Good Feeling, which is really, really good. And stuff like All I Want to Do Is Rock and U16 Girls is excellent. So they're going to have a bit more weighting in the Britpop world than that. So let's put them ahead of Black Grape, but just behind Cast. Verve are very special, aren't they? They probably do need to go into biblical, I'd say. Well, are they really biblical? You've got Urban Hymns is an absolutely classic album, but then Northern Soul has got some very good stuff, but beyond that isn't perfect for me. And The Storm in Heaven is just a bit messy. So I'm going to put them in the top of very good, just behind Supergrass, ahead of the Charlatans, and Paul Weller. So I haven't really got solo artists here except Paul Weller there. He deserved to be in there. He had to be, didn't he? Weller, I'm going to put in very good at the top, in and around the Verve and the Charlatans. He's definitely in that sort of world. So let's just put him ahead of Divine Comedy, but just behind the Charlatans. And I've just realized who it is. It's the Supernaturals. So Supernaturals can go last. They are going to go into some good tunes. I like the Supernaturals. They're decent. They're probably better than Heavy Stereo and Kaniki. Hurricane, they'll be in and around that Gomez, not quite as good as Dodgy. So there we go. That is it. That's 62 Britpop bands ranked, other than the fact that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or so that I still need to give a bit more of a listen to. But yeah, that's my ranking of the Britpop and UK indie bands. Let me know what you think. Share your comments below. And yeah, if you want to jump on and do one yourself, then I will put the link in the description below. But as ever, thank you very much for listening, watching. Stay in touch, stay engaged, and stay young.